there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Rebel Alliance. And it is Friday, so we're starting a little late today. Had some things going on around here. Have some individuals I'm trying to help out with some other issues within their association, as we were talking about yesterday, dealing with some zoning nonsense and that sort of thing, and along with some other stuff. So it's been a pretty busy week. So that being said, we're going to jump right into this today. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons of private membership associations. So before we get into this, as always, none of this constitutes as tax or legal advice. It's just one person's opinion on the topic. And if you're looking for more information, the websites are back up, so you can head over to East Coast PMA for more content, back episodes, DIY templates, or to schedule a consultation with myself. And then if you'd like to get onto the monthly call with myself and the ladies over at the PMA Manifesto, you can head over to the PMAmanifesto.com, get on the monthly newsletter. You'll be notified of when we are doing our live call, and then you can come in and have your questions answered. We do it once a month for about 45 minutes. And you can also find the DIY templates there, along with other content that you will not find on East Coast PMA. So it's just another really good resource for you. So that being said, put the comments on, and we got Debbie here. Hey, Debbie, how are you? Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Good to have you with us, and see who else pops in while we're going through these pros and cons of an association. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and ask away, and I will answer them at the end. Oh, and then one last thing. I know that some of you have used this code already. Thank you very much for that. But if you're like myself, you want to take back some of your computer sovereignty and not be tracked everywhere online, using a VPN is really good. That's a good way of doing it. But also running your own Start9 server is even a better way. You can have true end-to-end encrypted text messages like Jason Bourne level stuff, along with running your own BTC Pay, which is kind of like your own PayPal using Bitcoin and Lightning payments. You can run your own Lightning node, you can run your own Chat GPT, and there's a whole bunch of other things. And it's as easy as installing apps on your phone. If you go over to Start9 and you use the code Rebel Alliance at checkout, you get 9% off of your purchase. And if you use the Fold card, which pays you back in sats for using it, there's also a way to purchase a gift card through there with a discount, and it ends up being over like 15% off or something like that. I wish I knew about that when I bought mine, but hey, it's just, knowing that information, I guess. So make sure you use the code Rebel Alliance at checkout. And now let's turn these comments back on and get into today's topic. So this is episode 68. I've been messing up with these episode numbers. So we are at 68. I figured it out today. So Monday should be episode 69, unless I do something over the weekend, but we'll see, because it's the kids, one of the kids' birthdays. So we're going to go through the pros first, and then we'll go through the cons. So I've got 5 pros. I've got 5 cons. I'm going to try to keep this kind of short. It is Friday and all, and we're all getting geared up for the weekend. Maybe you're getting your gardens ready. You're doing some seed planting, preparing your beds, what have you, depending on what your weather's like. It's still cold here in Connecticut for us. But that being said, first thing is autonomy. And PMAs offer a member a high degree of control over their activities. They are allowed to operate independently for the most part of government oversight, and members are free to have their own rules and regulations as far as it goes with running the association. Now, again, as we've seen and we talked about yesterday's, where we're seeing a lot of pushback with associations in general is either when it comes to education for children, or if you are running, mostly education, or if you're doing some type of natural farming, dairy stuff at a large scale like Amos Miller. The government's trying to step in and regulate things. And here in Connecticut, and along with some other spots, they are starting to realize that, Connecticut and like 6 other states have very open statutes when it comes to religious organizations. So instead of going after them for operating a unlicensed childcare facility, they are now saying that they are violating zoning issues. So now you have to deal with the zoning board, which is just a bunch of, buddies hanging out, and they're always going to have each other's back, and that can be an uphill battle. But that being said, for the most part, the association itself is kind of like its own little republic, and it's all run by its members. The second thing that we have court cases that back this up with is the privacy aspect of it. There, one main advantage to having an association is the ability to maintain privacy and conduct the members can conduct their affairs with each other without having it to be public or have anybody sticking their nose in it. Like I say before, it's always between you, your member, and a fence post. And again, if something should be challenged, you don't have to give up your membership list. That way, whoever's investigating or the overreaching tyrannical government can't come and say, hey, we need to know who your members are so they can go harass them. You don't have to give them that information. So having that privacy is also key. And then also those different interactions with members, whether they're buying eggs from each other, they're bartering, or somebody's paying somebody to do a brake job and then they buy eggs from somebody else. Everything all your money stays within your community, which is really great. Now, that might not apply for everybody because not everybody's going to have a community-based association, but still the privacy aspect of it will go across the board regardless of what type of association you have. That also being said, flexibility is a nice aspect of it because as the individuals who are starting the association, you have an input on what your bylaws and articles of organization are going to say. You have a say on what your mission statement is, what the goal, the directive, or the direction of the association is, and the purpose of it. So, and what's great is they can quickly adapt to changing circumstances and members' needs. So maybe like we started off Liberty House with a certain aspect in mind, and it's kind of changed over the last 3 years. And then what also is great is they're not bound by the bureaucracy of local government and government regulations, so to speak, allowing more alliance and decision making within the members. So you don't have to worry about your town council telling you, hey, you can't meet with your association that's talking about living a more sustainable self-custody type of life, and you want to meet on the first Sunday of every month, and they say no, you can't do that. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You don't have to worry about them coming in and saying, hey, what are you doing over here? Hey, you can't grow stuff here, because it's all within your association and it's private. And then you also have that flexibility of changing. So maybe you started off as a more holistic lifestyle or self-sustaining lifestyle, and then you turned into more of a natural healing, right? There's all these different things you can add to it. So you have that. Number 4 is a big one. That's sense of community. And I think this goes across regardless of what type of association you're having, whether it is a community-based, holistic healthcare-based, or if it is I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that I've set up lately. Maybe it's somebody that has a farm or a homestead and they're teaching others how to farm and be more self-reliant. Maybe you have a butcher shop and you're teaching people how to butcher their own animals and you're offering classes. You're building that community. You have these individuals coming together for a common purpose. And it doesn't always have to be redressing of grievances with the government and that sort of thing. So you have that sense of community. It fosters a strong sense of community among its members who share common interests and values. And I think that's a really big thing. And then it can also lead to networking opportunities, collaboration, and support among like-minded members or individuals. So maybe you have one association on one side of town and another one on the other, and then you guys start getting together and doing stuff, and then you start having some of that cross-pollination. You start building that bigger sense of community. Even though you're two separate communities, you start realizing that these other people in the area that you can rely on. And then the last one, I think, which is also really important, is that it can be there's a lot of specialization into what your association is doing. So it can focus on a niche or niche, however you want to say it, an interest or special activities. Maybe it's something that's not really addressed by mainstream organizations. Maybe you have a bunch of homeschoolers in the area and you want to start an association for athletic activities. Maybe it's a soccer club, something like that, where you can then have membership for these homeschoolers to come. So there's a bunch of different things that you can really tailor these associations to. Again, you just want to make sure you're not breaking any laws, because no matter what, we can't break laws, right? So it also allows members to pursue their passions and get into a supportive environment that is going to foster that growth, whether it's agricultural, maybe it's self-sustainability, maybe it's preparedness, maybe it's a hunting, maybe it is understanding legalese and getting into common law. There's all these different things that can be part of it. So I think that's very important. Now, the cons, right? There's always cons to everything. Nothing is a silver bullet. Nothing is 100%. And like I said, these are just different types of tools we can use to enforce our liberties and our freedoms and to live as free as possible in this crazy world that we live in with this tremendous amount of government overreach. So, one thing that can happen if you don't have good founding documents, if you didn't write them yourself or get the DIY templates or hire one of the ladies over at the PMA manifesto or myself, is that you have lack of accountability. And without any oversight, the PMA itself could lack accountability for its mechanics, ensure fairness and ethical behavior. There could be other issues that, maybe there was a mission statement written down, but the mission's not being followed anymore. So all this stuff could be from one person that's acting as a cancer within the group that destroys it, and there's no means to remove them because there's nothing written down, there's no governing body. And so that could potentially lead to abuse of power and discrimination within the association. So you got to have that accountability, you have to have those documents done. That's very important. And yes, it is a beer, it's Friday, so cheers. Next is exclusivity. uh, I don't necessarily think of this myself as a con, but I could see it on the other side of the coin where it could be a con where, you know, associations usually restrict the type of person they allow in as long as it meets a specific criteria. Now, again, if you have a faith-based association where you are getting together because of your religious beliefs, you're not a ministry, you're not a church or anything like that, and you're just, hey, we're an association of people that are getting together. We all have a belief in a greater architect or a higher deity, and maybe it's God or whatever it is for you, and you get together and you do more self what's the word I want to look for? I don't want to say self-centered, but you're more centering your body. You're more connecting to maybe nature. You're more connecting to the great architect or whatever you'd like to call it. God or whoever, and whatever your religious beliefs are. And so, maybe you are getting together, and then like somebody that's an atheist wants to join, and you're like, well, we don't see how this would work for you. That sort of thing. Now, I think that has its place as long as you're not discriminating based on, some of the, uh, nationality, sex, creed, that sort of thing. But if you do have somebody that's coming in that doesn't align with your mission or the focus of the association, that maybe not be a bad thing. But on the other hand, I can also see on the other side of the coin how that could be limiting to the members that you're going to have or participation or diversity within the organization. I think diversity is kind of a bad word. I shouldn't use that word because I think you're going to have a diverse amount of people within your association coming from different walks of life, regardless of if you have an exclusivity to your membership or not. So exclusivity could be a double-edged sword. It could be a con in some instances, depending on how you look at it. Legal ambiguity is another one. So we've talked about this a bunch of times that if you have an association, constitutionally speaking or common law speaking, that in most cases, if you go to American jurisprudence and you look up associations, depending on the state you're in, but if we're looking at the 10,000-foot view based on common law and what American jurisprudence says, the association itself is not a separate legal entity from its members at that level. Now, you could be in a state where they've adopted the Unincorporated Nonprofit Association Act. You could be in a state where they recognize the unincorporated association as a separate legal entity outside of its members or the trustees or the board of directors, whatever you're calling yourselves, the ones that are running that association. So again, like we've said with everything else, it's very important to understand how associations are looked at in your area particularly. Now, if you're an online organization, it really doesn't matter as much. However, there are cases where we've seen it. Whoever, let's say you started in North Carolina, but you have an online community, the association would be looked at depending on how things are looked at in North Carolina for legalities, is from my understanding, from my research and what I've done. So, uh, again, you depending on the jurisdiction that you're in or the area that you're in, your geographical location will depend on the legal status of your association, whether it's considered a separate legal entity or not. And so that could be a con, because if people are worried about some type of liability or anything like that, that's why we say, hey, well, maybe you should have a nonprofit. You should have a anonymous LLC out of Wyoming, or maybe an unincorporated business trust, something along those lines, where you're tying the two together. That way, there you have the benefits of the association, all the rights that go along with that, and then you also have the limited liability, whether it's an anonymous LLC or the unincorporated business trust. So, legal ambiguity is another one, and that could also be an issue. And then, kind of within that too, is you think about taxation and how it's taxed. Now, in most cases, an association is going to be looked at as a partnership. Again, it's not tax advice. It's just what I've read and what I've looked at and how I treat our association. So if you are running an association and it's three of you, and there's, $15,000 left over at the end of the year after you have all your deductions and everything, and you're filing your taxes, then each of you would take that and file it on your 1040 as income. So again, it just depends on how you're running things and how you're set up. So that's number three. Number four is limited resources. And here it says, PMAs may have limited resources compared to public organizations, making it challenging to funding activities or provide necessary services to members. This could restrict the effectiveness and sustainability of the association for the long run. And I think I should have changed this a little bit. I should have put in there that, limited resources, kind of more of like banking, insurance. Sometimes it's harder. Sometimes banking, the banks don't really understand, what you're doing, because people go in there and say, well, we're a private membership association. We're not registered with the state. We're not in the public jurisdiction. And they kind of screw things up because they're not using the terminology that the bank will understand. And that is an unincorporated association. And, sometimes we can see that getting, whether it's bulk purchases or banking accounts, or maybe signing a lease. Some people are like, well, I'm not really quite sure. You're not an LLC, you're not an S Corp. Those are things I'm used to. I'm not really sure what you guys are as far as an entity. So I'm just not going to work with you. Right. So those are some of the things that we see. And unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, Bank of America, as fat as a pig that they are as far as bank and all the fees they charge, not that I've banked them probably in 20 years and probably even longer, they work really well with unincorporated associations for some oddball reason. Now, I have never set up an account with them. That's just the feedback I associations with and others. So that being said, those there are some limited resources, and just keep that in mind that sometimes you're going to have to jump through a few more hoops to explain how you're operating. And that's just kind of, goes hand in hand with operating in the private or in the non-public realm, I guess is the best way to put it, as a registered business type or association. Anything that's incorporated is probably the better way of putting it. And then I guess the last one, and this is kind of more in a whole type thing, is when it comes to the associations, yes, you have that sense of community with your members. However, because they are exclusive in their membership, they are limited in their membership. Sometimes the association itself might run a risk of isolation where it's not being incorporated with the broader aspects of society or the local community, because that association has its own members. It's not, I guess the best way to put it is it's not collaborating with a local society, right? Unless there's another association that they're collaborating with, right? Because everything we do within our association is private. So we're not gonna, you could go to a farmer's market and you could sell stuff if you had an association, but you're really not there in the capacity of the association, because everybody that would buy from you would have to be part of that association. And now you're going from an intimate association to a expressive association because of the number of people you have within your association. So, maybe, you can't show up at the farmer's market as the association, but you could show up providing information to the association, if that makes sense, right? So, because we are a closed community, so to speak, we have exclusivity to our membership. We're not open up to the public. There could be that risk of isolation from the rest of the community around us. And people may not know that we even exist or who we are, which may or may not be a bad thing, depending on how you're looking at it. But you do run that risk of kind of being on your own little PMA island or unincorporated association island with just you and your members. And that's why I say it's important to let people know that you have an association or who you are, what you do, have a vetting process, bring people in, work with other local groups. And they don't have to be an association. Maybe it's just a group of individuals that meet up every Saturday and they get together for a cookout and they talk about politics and what's going on in the community and how they want to make some change. And then they say, oh, well, look what these people are doing. They're actually doing some stuff to make change, or they're making their lives better by relying on each other and teaching each other those skill sets. So maybe, they want to end up joining. It's just kind of, just kind of one of the things that I kind of thought about that, even though it is great having the association and having exclusivity to who our members are and not being open to the public, that there is that risk of, sort of being quasi isolated because of the fact that we're not, working with, everybody within this, within the area. So those are kind of my top 5, I guess, pros and cons of associations. And again, I personally feel that the pros outweigh the cons. Yes, there are some hills, there are going to be some battles, there are going to be some challenges, but at the end of the day, I think all those challenges and hills that you have to climb and everything like that are worth having that group or that society that comes together for that common goal and to work towards whatever the goal is and to just be left alone. And I just think that's important. I think that's one of the things that's great about associations. And again, they don't fit every single need. I've turned more people away from getting associations than probably I've set up. And that's just because what they're trying to do doesn't fit in with the association aspect or the framework of the association, that right of assembly. So that's it. See if we got any questions here. We have 0 questions. So hopefully, I don't want to keep on here any longer than we need to be. It is Friday afternoon. I've got to go pick up some kiddos and enjoy the weekend. So thank you all for watching. I will see you on Monday, if not Sunday. We might have a special on Sunday, but we'll see. Until then, have a great weekend. Peace.
Uprisings all over the country.